When you think about the 1980s, what comes to mind? Maybe you think about the years your mother graduated high school. Or maybe you think about a time where cell phones didn't exist. Now that's scary. However, for me and my culture, the 1980s was the best decade ever. This right here is no ordinary radio. This is what we call in the street dance culture the ghetto blaster. Now back in the 1980s, the ghetto blaster was the weapon of choice for street dancers. However, now it's more of a monument to the courage, the creativity, the life struggles that these original dancers had to go through in order to make street dance culture acceptable today. So, learning about, oh, actually no. When I was 9 years old, I started dancing. And ever since then, this ghetto blaster has served as a reminder to me of the original street dancers and the struggles they had to go through in order to make sure that my culture is acceptable today. Thus, learning about the ghetto blaster will help us get a better understanding of how the street dance culture works. First, I'm going to be talking about how the ghetto blaster affected everybody's culture, the street dance culture, and then I'm going to talk about how the ghetto blaster affected me personally. Music has always been closely related to dance. But back in the 1980s, the closest thing to an iPod was a Walkman, which was this little tiny cassette player that you plug in your ears. Nobody else can hear but you. Without loud music, it was very difficult for dancers to express themselves when they're on the streets and there's no music to hit and dance to. Thankfully, though, as street dance culture began to expand, there was a new radio coming out that would become the symbol for street dancers, which is the ghetto blaster. Now, when the ghetto blaster was first invented, it was designed to be big, bulky, and intimidating. However, it didn't just serve as an intimidating, loud music player. What it did was it was also a metaphorical weapon against the hardships that each and every single dancer had to face. Street dancing was created in the slums of New York and Los Angeles. And dancing was one of the only few ways that street dancers can get away from the street violence, the discrimination, the poverty that each and every one of them had. So one of the only ways that they can get out of this was dancing. And that helped, this radio helped, this boombox, this ghetto blaster helped change that aspect of their music, of their culture. Now every popper had one of these. Every popper, every breaker, every street dancer had a ghetto blaster. And if you didn't have a ghetto blaster or you didn't roll with anybody who had a ghetto blaster, then you were at a disadvantage from all the other dancers. You see, the ghetto blaster was not necessarily, the ghetto blaster was an image thing. What you do with it, if you've got a bigger ghetto blaster, that means you have clear music, which means you have a better dancing skill, or you might be showing up, without a dance skill, so you want to scare everybody with your ghetto blaster if it's bigger. A bigger blaster meant you had clear music. Clear music meant you were a better dancer, most of the time. However, the ghetto blaster was supposed to be like the dancers of that era. They were loud, they were strong, they were powerful, they were proud of what they were doing. And it was customizable like every other street dancer. No one street dancer was alike. No one move was the same for every street dancer. So what street dancers used to do, they used to customize these, they used to graffiti on them, they used to make them their own. And that kind of showed that even though street dancers were all different, they all had one powerful voice, all one single thing to say. Now, I've been a popper for 10 years of my life, and ever since I was in elementary school, I've been picked on. Before I was starting to dancing, I was not as tall as I am now. I was skinny, I was scrawny, I was weird, I was the only white kid in my school, so I was an easy target. However, I wanted to go look for something different, to make myself feel more comfortable. And what I found was dancing. Now, street dancing, popping more specifically. When I first walked into class, I walked in and I looked up at the teacher and I said, wow, this guy looks scary. He's 5'7", he's got baggy pants, he's got tattooed arms, he's got a bald head. Looks like a cholo, right? Scared the crap out of me. However, he was the nicest person that I had ever met in my whole entire life. Kindest person. And he took me under his wing and he took me to places and he showed me how to dance and how to move my body in order to make myself not look like a fool on the dance floor. No matter where we went, no matter if we went to, a ghetto or we went to someplace that was dangerous, I always felt safe with my dancing. If I went to school and I felt, I was in trouble with something, dancing would always, at the end of the day, would always make me feel better about myself. So what I brought here today with me is my mentor, my teacher, my cholo-looking teacher. He's the original ghetto blaster. He would take this around on the streets, carry it around, and go around, put it down, play it, and start battling against people, dance battling against people. However, the first time, the reason why it has significance for me is the first Ghetto Blaster that I picked up on my shoulder and I held it. Back when I was young and I was first starting, I think maybe 2 weeks or a week before one of my first performances, my teacher came up and asked me, or asked the class, who wants to hold this Ghetto Blaster and walk it onto stage before we perform? And me being the little kid I am, I was like, oh, pick me, pick me, pick me, pick me. And I wanted to be picked. So he chose me, and he put the Ghetto Blaster down, and he said, here, pick it up. So I picked it up very much like this over my shoulder, and imagine this little white kid carrying this exact size Ghetto Blaster walking around. And it made me feel a little different about myself. It made me feel strong, it made me feel taller, it made me feel more important. Because again, this was a piece of history that I was holding that my teacher had given to me as, you know, something to keep safe. It just made me feel like I had something to add to the street dancing culture. So the next time you see one of these guys, or if you have one, I heard a lot of you guys have a Ghetto Blaster, that's cool. Try to remember what it means to me and my culture. Try to remember how this relic, how it affected every street dancer. See, the Ghetto Blaster's main purpose was to play music, but it was much more than that. It was more of a statement. It was much more, you know, something that meant a lot to every single street dancer. It gave us a strength, it gave us purpose. Because now that I've said that, it doesn't matter where you are, who you are, or how you are. If you see Ghetto Blaster and you see people dancing, you know you're part of the ghetto, you know you're part of the street dancing culture. One more thing. The next time you think about the 80s, you think about funky hair. Oh, wait, let's back up quick. Funky hair, funky clothes, you know, Cabbage Patch Kids. Make sure that you remember that those things are stuck back in the 80s. Street dancing culture and the Ghetto Blaster made the street dancing culture move out of the 80s. Thank you.